Every promise that's been made by Priti Patel and indeed Boris Johnson since 2019 that they were going to get tough, going to deal with it, that the levels are unacceptable, all of it has come to absolutely nothing. I would really, honestly, genuinely, sincerely like to know what is the Labour policy.
Well, you're right that we're failing to deal with this issue, and one of the reasons is that we have a Home Secretary who loves to just chase headlines rather than have a proper, tangible plan in place. Labour's plan is clear. Rather than waste millions of pounds of taxpayers' money on the madcap Rwanda scheme that isn't going to deter anybody from making these crossings, let's use that money to boost the National Crime Agency. We would recruit over 100 specialists that would be working closely with the authorities in France and Belgium and other EU countries to actually crack down on the evil people smugglers. There have been a number of very successful operations recently, and we can do much more. That means actually seconding specialists out to those countries and working much more closely with them. So cracking down on the evil people smugglers at source is vital. The other big failing of Priti Patel is that the number of asylum applications that are being processed has fallen off a cliff on her watch, and as a result we have 37,000 asylum seekers in emergency hotels, costing the taxpayer £4.7 million a day. And one of the big problems with that is that some of those asylum seekers, probably around 25 to 30%, is how many normally fail in their asylum applications. They're not valid asylum seekers, but if you don't process them, you don't identify them as being invalid, and you're not therefore able to send them back to the first safe country that they came through. So let's actually use the wasted money on Rwanda, put that into investing for the NCA and in more decision makers so that we can process these asylum seekers, clear the backlog and start to tackle this terrible issue.
Points there, Stephen. I mean, number one, you're quite right. The National Crime Agency, in conjunction with other European police forces, did have a very successful arrest of 39 people smugglers, and for a couple of weeks it slowed the numbers. But when you can make millions and millions of euros a week, I suspect there's always someone to replace them. But let's be clear. For those people who come to this country who do not qualify for genuine refugee status, and I would rather suggest to you that almost all of the young Albanians coming would not, be clear, would the Labour Party deport those people?
You have to, first of all, process their claim. That's the problem, Nigel. If you've just got people waiting in limbo, what do you do with them? And also, because we failed to negotiate a successor to the Dublin regulation, we're not able to send people back to their first safe country that they alighted in. So the total failure of the government since Brexit to negotiate a successor to Dublin is a massive issue in all of this. But once you have processed people, you can say whether or not their application for asylum is valid or not, and if it isn't, you have to be ready to deport them. That is absolutely clear, and that is Labour's policy.
Well, Stephen. The Dublin regulation, whilst we were EU members, only applied to people who had previously submitted asylum applications. I asked you a very simple question. Would a Labour government deport those who failed refugee status? And you answered me by saying we have to be prepared to. Would you or would you not?
Yes. Those who are not valid asylum applicants should not be granted asylum, and therefore they can't get into the country to work, because you only get into the country on the basis of the points-based immigration system. And if you don't have the points and you don't have a sponsor employer, you can't remain in this country. Now, there are big challenges around deportation. There are some countries that don't want to cooperate with us on deportation, and because we don't have a successor to the Dublin regulation, we're not able to deport people back to the first safe country in which they landed, which was part of the burden-sharing arrangements that we had when we were under Dublin. So, we're stuck in that limbo. But if you don't have a points-based qualification and you don't have a sponsor employer and you are not a valid asylum seeker,
I'm sorry, Stephen Kinnock. Stephen Kinnock, genuine refugees don't need points-based systems for employment. Look, I think this is a work in progress. I thank you for coming on and explaining Labour's policy. I can't pretend I'm that much clearer at the end of it.